Late last night, the Detroit Lions made yet another major coaching hire, but everybody's now trying to figure out what's the reason as to why the Lions did it. Well, I'm about to tell you in this episode what I believe the real reason is. Stay tuned, everybody. It's about to get fun.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. Folks, I'm going to tell you something right now. I remember when the news broke late last night. It was around 6 o'clock, give or take, when the news came out that the Lions had made yet another coaching hire. Now, I can tell you this right now. I'm pretty confident that, much like everybody else, nobody had heard about this guy, at least from the sense of, okay, has this guy been on our radar as a guy that we would potentially have thought, the Lions were going to bring in? Not a chance. But I can tell you this, as soon as I heard his name, I was like, okay, I need to figure out who this guy is. And not just from a base level. I need to know as much about him as I can. Because I can tell you this right now, everybody's going to tell you the exact same thing about this dude. Oh yes, this guy's been coaching for the last, damn near 30 years. This guy spent a lot of time in the NCAA. The guy's done this, the guy's done that. That's great, grand, fine, and glorious. But I'm telling you this right now. I spent probably about a good 4 or 5 hours last night just deep diving into this dude. Trying to figure out everything and anything I could to say, okay, what about this hire is truly different, truly special than just, saying we hired another coach? And let me tell you something. The more I went into it, the more I realized really quickly, I was like, okay, I can see exactly why the Lions hired this dude. And I'm going to tell you exactly why I think the real reason the Lions brought him in. So, let's just get into it here really quickly, folks. We're just going to do some basic, breakdown information here just to kind of set the scene. I'm not going to try and waste your guys' time because I'm pretty sure you guys already know a lot about his basic information. Shaw's been coaching since 1995. He's spent most of his time coaching in the NCAA. He has some NFL prior experience, but again, most of his time coaching has been in college. When it comes to Shaw, one of the things that already people have already, made a connection on is that Shaw has prior, coaching experience, prior coaching connection when it comes to new offensive coordinator John Morton. How do they have a direct correlation? They have a direct correlation together because they coached together underneath John Gruden with the Raiders from 1998 to 2001. So if you go back to the episode I just made about John Morton, that's already a pretty big thing because John Gruden already said that he has a very high respect for John Morton as an offensive schemer, as an offensive game planner. Well, as I'm about to show you later on in this episode, do not for 1 second think that David Shaw does not fall into that category. They also, that is Morton and Shaw, have an indirect connection in the fact that they have both worked under Jim Harbaugh. If you go back to John Morton, I told you all that he worked underneath, Jim Harbaugh in college in 2005 at the College of San Diego. He then followed Jim Harbaugh to the 49ers and was with him from 2011 to 2014. Well, when you take a look at Shaw has done virtually the exact same thing, albeit it was only in college. He was at San Diego underneath Jim Harbaugh in 2006. He then followed Jim Harbaugh to Stanford to become his offensive coordinator from 2007 to 2010. So, okay, Morton and Shaw already share a lot of the similarities when it comes to their coaching roots, when it comes to their coaching trees, to their coaching influences. You're talking John Gruden. You're talking Jim Harbaugh. You're talking guys that know a lot about the West Coast offense. They're talking about guys that are quarterback whisperers. These guys clearly know how to get the best out of their quarterbacks. And I'm not just talking about Harbaugh and Gruden. I'm talking about Morton and Shaw. Now, the one thing about Shaw that is different than Morton is the fact that Morton has never been a head coach. Shaw has. Shaw was the Stanford head coach from 2011 to 2021. Very successful for the most part as a Stanford head coach. I think he went 96-54, which is like a .64 winning record, had a 5-3 bowl game record, which is also very damn good. And of those 5 wins he had in bowl games, 2 of them were in the Rose Bowl. Rose Bowl's still a pretty damn big, important bowl game. So, okay, just from a face value standpoint, there's a hell of a lot to like about David Shaw. But once you start peeling back the layers and you start deep diving even more into this, there's a reason why I have my episode titled the way I do, because I believe the real reason here has an extensive amount to do with Jared Goff, but not in the way I think some people are going to initially view this as. Why am I saying that? Well, let me tell you all something here. As soon as I found out that Shaw had worked at Stanford in the late 2000s, early 2010s, my, historical brain started kicking in here. I was like, wait a minute here. I know of 2 quarterbacks that came from Stanford that are considered some of the greatest of their generations. The first was John Elway. Well, I know John Elway was back in the freaking 1970s before he got into the NFL in the 80s. So obviously that one doesn't correlate. But I know the one that does correlate in this reference to Shaw is former quarterback Andrew Luck. Again, I remember when Andrew Luck was coming out of college. Everybody said the exact same damn thing about him. He's the next generational quarterback that you want to have. There's a reason why when the Colts drafted him, everyone thought that was going to be a great move because, okay, they had just lost Peyton Manning. Now they're bringing in the next generational quarterback to be his successor. And call me crazy, but if Andrew Luck would have just had simply some better rosters, some better teams in Indianapolis, it wouldn't have been too far of a stretch to imagine, Andrew Luck having himself a Super Bowl win. And when you go back and you take a look at how good Andrew Luck was actually in college, it's a major, major flex for David Shaw to have that on his resume. In fact, let me just put this out there for you. David Shaw quite literally can say that he was the one that helped grow Andrew Luck into the quarterback that he was in college, so that way he could get the recognition he was when he got to the NFL. Because think about this, folks. If you go back to when Luck was in college from 2008 to 2011. So 08, 09, 10, 11. Those are the 4 years right there. In 2008, Luck redshirted. So he didn't start playing at Stanford until 2009. 2009, not really a good year for him because that was his first year starting. So it might as well have been his freshman year. But if you take a look at 2010 and 2011, you get a very, very clear picture why, coming out of college, Luck was considered not only the best quarterback in the draft when he got drafted, but as I said, a generational talent. Just take a look at this, folks. In 2010, and I'm going to put this up on the screen. In 2010, Andrew Luck was the 5th best quarterback in the nation in completion percentage. He was the 16th best quarterback in passing yards. He was tied for 7th best in the nation for passing touchdowns, 3rd best in the NCAA for both touchdown throwing percentage and passer rating. Then when you flip over to 2011, his senior year, his final year in college, he was 7th in the nation in completion percentage, 17th in the nation in passing yards, tied 4th in passing touchdowns out of all NCAA quarterbacks, tied 5th for touchdown throwing percentage out of all NCAA quarterbacks, and ranked 5th out of all NCAA quarterbacks for passer rating. Okay, here. Again, I don't have to be a mathematical genius to understand something here. Outside of just the passing yards, which again, still top 20. Because remember, in college, you're not dealing with 32 teams. You're dealing like damn near almost 150 to 200 teams. The fact that Andrew Luck was in the top 20 for everything and was in the top 10 for everything else save the passing yards, that right there ought to tell you something of just how damn good of a quarterback he was at Stanford. So considering the fact that, okay, David Shaw has the major flex of saying he got the best out of Andrew Luck to then make sure that when he got to when he left the college level to go to the NFL level, that's a major, major flex. Because to be able to say that you were the guy that developed Andrew Luck in college, okay, yeah, you've definitely got people's attention. But then think about it this way, folks. As I said, John Gruden said specifically about John Morton that this guy is a massive, has a massive flex when it comes to game planning. We've seen from the episode I talked about with Morton in the past that Morton knows how to game plan very, very well, especially when it comes to the passing game. Well, as we just saw here with Andrew Luck, we know that David Shaw has the capability of doing that as well. So already you're seeing a combination effect between Shaw and Morton to get the best out of quarterbacks. That's going to play a key factor here because the real reason I believe that the Lions brought in Shaw and combined him with Morton again is directly tied to Jared Goff. Now, I'm going to make this abundantly clear here. I do not believe for 1 minute that they're trying to instill a pass-heavy offense. That's not at all what I think they're trying to do here. In fact, I think that it's the exact opposite. I think the Lions are going to continue to have the exact same style of offense that they've always had. A balanced offense which uses the run and the pass in equal measure. But when you bring in a guy like David Shaw and you bring in a guy like John Morton, who clearly are as knowledgeable and clearly as good at what they do as far as game planning and scheming for offensive passing attacks, you have to ask yourself the question, what then are they trying to do? Here's the answer. What most people don't know about David Shaw is that David Shaw was probably one of the last coaches that could honestly say got direct mentoring from Bill Walsh. Yeah, that Bill Walsh. The great-granddaddy of them all when it comes to the West Coast offense. This is the guy that worked underneath Paul Brown in the Cincinnati Bengals. The guy who developed the West Coast offense. The guy who made Joe Montana who he is. That Bill Walsh. Here's why I say this. If you go back to when freaking, Shaw was back at Stanford as a player. He was a wide receiver back then. Well, Shaw and Bill Walsh as a coach, they developed a great relationship together. Shaw appreciated Walsh's attention to detail and he appreciated how Walsh ran things. And according to what I was able to find in reports, Walsh and Shaw, they would spend hours talking after practice, during practice, trying to, go over things. Because Shaw was that enamored to learn everything he could from his coach. Well, in an article that I was able to find, and this goes back a couple of years, like we're talking early 2010s, mid 2010s, but it's still relevant. Somebody asked David Shaw, they said, hey, what was the one thing that Bill Walsh taught you or told you to look for when it came to quarterbacks? Remember how I said this had everything to do with Goff? Listen to this. Shaw had 2 quotes directly when it came to this question. Here are the quotes. Quote number 1. David Shaw said that and this is again in reference to what he heard and what he was taught from Bill Walsh. He said, Bill Walsh said that the number one thing that you're looking for is a guy that can do the things that you can't coach. He's got a sense in the pocket, not just because we've trained him, but because he can feel the pocket breaking down. He can slide and make an awkward body throw. He picks things up pretty quickly, and he has a sense for being able to compete. Okay, folks. I know some people are going to say, well, how the hell does that have any correlation to do with Goff? Again, Goff might not be the most athletic quarterback, but if there's one thing we have seen about Goff is that Goff has a very good sense of what's going on in the pocket. He has the ability to figure out, okay, is pressure coming? Do I need to get the ball out quickly? He has that sense about him. And again, if there's one thing you cannot deny about Jared Goff, he is a fierce competitor. So that was phrase number one. But like I said, David Shaw further elaborated on it. He then said this. He said, of course you're looking for a consistent throwing motion and a smart guy with great footwork and a strong arm. And all of those things that are tangible. But also the intangible of this guy is ultra competitive. He has a feel for the play of the game. He has a sense for timing. He has a sense for pushing up in the pocket. You're looking for those things that you can't teach. That right there, that last quote, that's the money quote when we're talking about Goff here. Goff is not the most athletic quarterback. I have made this abundantly clear multiple times. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not a freaking Justin Fields. He's none of those things. But what Goff is a very competitive, very sound, savvy dude when it comes to understanding offense, when understanding his footwork and his mechanics. And Jared Goff has shown that because of those things, even though he is athletically limited versus other quarterbacks, because he has a sense for understanding when things around him are starting to break down, he can make things happen that most other quarterbacks can't. So, okay, Jared Goff has both the intangible factor that Shaw was talking about from Bill Walsh, as well as the tangible factor. So things you can teach versus things you can't teach. Now, why is this important? Well, again, as I said, Bill Walsh is the guy who is how do I put this? Bill Walsh is the guy that's credited with making the West Coast style offense the pretty much gold standard when it comes to the NFL. Well, let's also understand something else about Bill Walsh here. Bill Walsh is the guy that, made Joe Montana who he is. Well, for anybody that knows anything about Jared Goff, Joe Montana was his childhood hero, his childhood idol when it came to football, his favorite quarterback. Wait a minute here. David Shaw works directly with Bill Walsh, is mentored, tutored by him. Bill Walsh, the granddaddy of them all when it comes to the West Coast offense, the guy who knows virtually everything there is to know about the West Coast and what to look for in a quarterback when you're talking about that offense. Gee, you just brought that guy in to be the passing game coordinator, which means he has to directly work with Jared Goff. Now, ain't that interesting? Because let me show you something here, folks. Everybody is still trying to make out whether or not they're okay with this John Morton hire as offensive coordinator. Well, let me put this out there, folks. I said this in the episode with John Morton. John Morton has been a passing game coordinator. He's been an offensive coordinator before. And we have seen what he's done with other offensive-minded coaches like Sean Payton, like John Gruden, like Jim Harbaugh. He's been very good. Well, think about this, folks. If you take a look at how Jared Goff did in the 3 years where, Johnson, the former offensive coordinator, was the guy calling the plays, because I don't really include 2021. That was more of Anthony Lynn was the guy doing it, and then they took plays away from him and gave it to Dan Campbell, and that's when Ben Johnson started becoming the passing game coordinator. Johnson didn't become the actual offensive coordinator until 2022. But think about this, folks. I'm going to put this up here really quickly. In 2022, what was Jared Goff's numbers? Jared Goff in 2022 had 65.1 completion percentage rate, just a smidge under 4,500 passing yards, 29 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, 99.3 passer rating, 63.3 QBR. Pretty solid damn numbers. If you then go to 2023, he got better in pass completion percentage, he got better in passing yards, he got better in passing touchdowns. His passer rating went down slightly, and so did his QBR. But then, if you go to 2024, this most recent year, Jared Goff's numbers went through the damn stratosphere. Not only did he once again increase his completion percentage, his passing yards, his passing touchdowns, he also magnificently, absolutely increased his passer rating and QBR. Again, in 2023, he had a passer rating of 97.9 and a QBR of 61.1 with 30 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, 4,575 passing yards, and a 67.3 passing completion percentage. Again, pretty damn good numbers. All of those numbers were top 10 that year. But if you go to 2024, Jared Goff pretty much said, oh, hold my beer. Because this last year, Goff was 72.4 completion percentage rate, ranked second. 4,629 passing yards, ranked second. 37 touchdowns, ranked fourth. 12 interceptions, 111.8 passer rating, ranked second. 68.5 QBR, ranked sixth. Jared Goff, as I'm trying to show here, under Johnson, he got better from the start of the Johnson era with him as the offensive coordinator to the end of it. So why am I bringing that up? The reason I believe, the true, real reason I believe the Lions have made the move to bring in Shaw and pair him with John Morton to get those two to work with Jared Goff is because what the Lions are trying to do is they're trying to challenge Jared Goff to get even better. And I'm not saying because he's not good enough or he's not been better or he's not shown that he's getting better. To put it even further better. What do I mean by that? Think about this, folks. When Johnson became the offensive coordinator, what did Dan Campbell constantly say they were trying to do with Goff? They were trying to challenge him. They were trying to push him. They were trying to get more things out of Goff, and they were trying to see what he could do. Well, when you take a look at the numbers, every single year that they kept putting more things on Goff's plate, the better he got. And this last year was the best year of Goff's career. And as, freaking Brad Holmes just said, what was it, about a week ago? Oh yeah, that's right. Goff's in his prime, like he's just entering his prime. Hell, we just saw it last night with the skills competition with the freaking Pro Bowl. Goff, he led the whole quarterbacking of the freaking passing element for the pass competition. He scored 44 points. Absolutely blew everybody else out of the water. So think about that. Johnson showed that, okay, I don't have to have a hell of a lot of experience as an offensive coordinator or as a passing game coordinator to get Jared Goff to become a top 5, top 3 quarterback statistically. So if Johnson, with virtually no play calling experience, no kind of experience at all, compared to Morton and Shaw, was able to do that with Jared Goff, imagine what Shaw and Morton combined will be able to do with him. Again, you're talking about guys that have developed and worked with guys like Drew Brees, Bo Nix, and like I said, David Shaw was mentored by the guy that worked with, Joe Montana. So think about this, folks. What better way to get Jared Goff more excited than to possibly work with somebody who worked with the coach who coached his boyhood idol? You want to talk about a guy now that's going to be highly motivated, even more so than what he was to begin with. That's what you're getting now. You're getting two guys in Shaw and Morton that know exactly how to bring out the best in a quarterback. Jared Goff is already considered one of the best in the NFL. Now you're trying to even go further than that. Think about it. If you were able to take Jared Goff to yet another level of what we saw this year, he wouldn't just be a top 3 quarterback. He would be the best quarterback. Jared Goff absolutely played out of his damn mind this year. But now you bring in Shaw and you bring in Morton as the passing game coordinator and as the offensive coordinator. You still have all the pieces that you've had before. You're looking to improve the defense not only from a health standpoint, but also from adding more talent. Yeah, I can see why the real reason the Lions brought in freaking Shaw and Morton. They brought them in to make sure that Goff is constantly being challenged, because that's what you want. You want to keep your quarterback constantly challenged, and Goff himself wants that. The more you challenge somebody to push themselves past their limits, the better they get. Goff knows this. Goff wants to get better, so he's like, listen, bring in somebody who can continually push me. Bring in somebody who can keep challenging me. I want to do more. I want more things put on my plate. Because again, what is, freaking Campbell said? Oh yeah, he's now involved in pass protections. He's now involved in making audibles multiple times during the game. We trust him with that. Hell, at this point, realistically, the only thing else that Goff can do would be to become as a Peyton Manning or as a Tom Brady in the past, a offensive coordinator on the damn field. That's in essence what the Lions are trying to get Goff to. And when you've got Sean Morton now there, you can do that. You can definitely do that. But anyway, folks, that's what I think the real reason's going on here, and I am absolutely elated with it. But having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content. Please share it with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. The more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, to all my fans and all my, friends out there, if this is the first time you guys are watching me, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. And if this is the upteenth time you've watched me, same thing applies to you as well. Also, to everybody, I hope you all have something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.